Tensions between Denmark, Greenland, and the United States have escalated sharply in early 2026, marking one of the most unusual and consequential diplomatic confrontations in recent Arctic history. At the center of the dispute are renewed and increasingly forceful statements by U.S. President Donald Trump suggesting that Greenland should come under American control. While Trump has previously floated the idea of purchasing the island during his first presidency, his latest comments have gone significantly further, prompting alarm across Europe and drawing firm resistance from both Denmark and Greenland's leadership. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen has described the moment as decisive, warning that the situation now challenges fundamental principles of sovereignty, international law, and alliance trust at a time of growing geopolitical instability. Greenland, the world's largest island, occupies a unique political and strategic position. It is a self-governing territory within the Kingdom of Denmark, having gained extensive autonomy in 2009, including control over most domestic affairs. However, Denmark retains responsibility for defense and foreign policy. With a population of roughly 56,000 people, Greenland is sparsely inhabited but enormously significant due to its location in the Arctic, its proximity to North America, and its vast reserves of rare earth minerals. As climate change accelerates Arctic ice melt, the region has become increasingly accessible, intensifying competition among global powers seeking influence, resources, and military advantage. The United States already maintains a long-standing military presence in Greenland through Pituffik Space Base, formerly Thule Air Base, which plays a critical role in missile warning systems and space surveillance. This presence has historically been governed by defense agreements with Denmark and conducted within the framework of NATO cooperation. However, President Trump's recent rhetoric has shifted the tone from strategic partnership to territorial ambition. He has argued that Greenland is essential to U.S. national security and has suggested that Washington may pursue control of the island regardless of Danish or Greenlandic opposition. These remarks have been widely interpreted in Europe as coercive and destabilizing, particularly given their framing in national security terms rather than diplomatic negotiation. Denmark's response has been unusually direct. Prime Minister Frederiksen has publicly called on President Trump to stop what she described as threats against a close ally, stating unequivocally that the United States has no right to annex or take over any part of the Danish realm. She has emphasized that Greenland belongs neither to Denmark nor to the United States, but to the Greenlandic people themselves. Frederiksen has framed the dispute as a test of whether international law and the principle of self-determination still hold weight in an era of rising power politics. Her comments reflect growing concern in European capitals that unilateral actions by major powers could undermine long-standing norms that have governed relations between allies since the Second World War. Greenland's own leaders have been equally firm in rejecting Trump's statements. Greenlandic officials have stressed that the island is not for sale and that any discussion about its future must be decided by Greenlanders alone. While there is strong support within Greenland for eventual independence from Denmark, there is little appetite for replacing Danish oversight with American sovereignty. Many Greenlanders view Trump's comments as dismissive of their political agency and cultural identity, reinforcing long-standing concerns about external powers treating the Arctic as a strategic prize rather than a region inhabited by real communities with their own aspirations. The dispute has sent ripples through NATO, raising uncomfortable questions about alliance unity. Denmark and the United States are both founding members of the alliance, which is built on the principle of collective defense and mutual respect for territorial integrity. Danish officials have warned that any attempt by one NATO member to coerce or seize territory from another would fundamentally undermine the alliance's credibility. While there has been no suggestion of imminent military action, the language used by Trump has prompted European leaders to openly question how NATO should respond if alliance norms are challenged from within rather than by an external adversary. International reaction has largely favored Denmark's position. Leaders across Europe have voiced support for Copenhagen and Greenland, emphasizing that borders cannot be changed through pressure or intimidation. The issue has also been closely watched in Asia and the Global South, where concerns persist about powerful states disregarding international law, when it suits their strategic interests. Analysts note that how the Greenland dispute is handled could set a precedent for other contested regions, particularly as climate change opens new areas to competition and exploitation. Underlying the diplomatic clash is the rapidly changing geopolitical landscape of the Arctic. Russia has significantly expanded its military infrastructure in the region, while China has declared itself a near-Arctic state and invested heavily in polar research and resource projects. The United States views Greenland as a critical asset in maintaining strategic advantage in the high north, particularly as missile defense, space monitoring, and undersea capabilities become increasingly central to global security. Denmark, meanwhile, argues that these strategic interests can and should be pursued through cooperation rather than coercion, within existing legal frameworks and alliances. For Denmark, the confrontation represents more than a bilateral disagreement with Washington. Frederiksen has described it as a defining moment for the international order, warning that the erosion of respect for sovereignty could have far-reaching consequences. Her government has sought to balance firmness with diplomacy, avoiding escalation while making clear that Denmark will not compromise on the principle that Greenland's future is not subject to external pressure. This approach reflects broader European efforts to assert strategic autonomy while maintaining transatlantic ties in an increasingly unpredictable global environment. As the standoff continues, the future remains uncertain. Diplomatic channels between Copenhagen, Nuuk, and Washington remain open, but trust has been strained. For Greenland, the episode has reinforced the importance of self-determination and international recognition of its political status. For Denmark and its allies, it has exposed vulnerabilities within existing alliances and highlighted the challenges of managing great power competition without undermining the rules-based system. For the United States, the controversy has raised questions about how far strategic necessity can justify rhetoric that unsettles allies and destabilizes regions already under pressure from climate change and geopolitical rivalry. Ultimately, the Greenland dispute is about far more than one island. The confrontation shows how strategic necessity is increasingly invoked to justify pressure on smaller states and territories, raising difficult questions about whether sovereignty and self-determination can withstand intensifying geopolitical rivalry. How this moment is handled will signal whether alliances, such as NATO, remain grounded in mutual respect and shared values, or whether they risk being hollowed out by greed and ambition. It will also shape expectations for behavior in other strategically sensitive regions, from the Arctic to the Pacific, where environmental change and the lure of strategic global footholds open new frontiers to competition. What is clear is that Greenland, once viewed as remote and peripheral, now occupies a central place in debates about power, law, and legitimacy in the 21st century. The crisis has prompted European and transatlantic actors to consider a range of responses aimed at reinforcing the existing international order. From reaffirming commitments to sovereignty and territorial integrity and exploring enhanced NATO military presence in the Arctic, to contemplating economic countermeasures and diplomatic efforts to reassure Washington that Greenland's security concerns are already addressed through existing defense agreements. These responses clearly outline the depth of concern that an attempt to seize territory from a NATO ally could fundamentally undermine decades of collective defense cooperation and unsettle global confidence in established norms. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more News Guru Now.